The afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of Penn Station, casting long shadows across the worn tile floor. Margaret stood near the ticket counter. Her 3-year-old son Tommy nestled against her hip, his small arms wrapped tightly around her neck. She could feel his breath, warm and steady. Against her shoulder, a small comfort in a moment that felt impossibly heavy. She had been standing there for nearly 10 minutes, watching other travelers move past with their rolling suitcases and coffee cups, their lives seemingly uncomplicated, their destinations certain. Margaret's own situation felt like standing at the edge of a cliff she hadn't meant to approach. Her wallet sat open in her trembling hand. Inside were $17 and a handful of coins. The ticket home to her mother's house in Philadelphia cost $63. She had checked 3 times, hoping the numbers might somehow rearrange themselves into something more manageable. Tommy shifted in her arms, and she adjusted his weight, pressing a kiss to his dark hair. He had been so patient today, this little boy of hers, through the long morning at the welfare office, through the walk to the station when the bus fare seemed too precious to spend, through the growing realization that they might not make it home after all. "Mama," he whispered, his voice small and tired. "When do we go see Grandma?" Margaret felt her throat tighten. "Soon, sweetheart, soon." But she didn't know if that was true. Her phone had died 2 hours ago. Her mother was expecting them by dinner time. And here they stood, stranded in the middle of New York City with nowhere to go and no way to get there. She had already asked at the ticket counter. The woman behind the glass had been kind but firm. There were no payment plans, no exceptions, no way to board without a valid ticket. Margaret had nodded, understanding but not accepting, and stepped aside to let others pass. Now she stood paralyzed by indecision and pride. The indecision about what to do next, the pride that made asking for help feel like swallowing broken glass. A man approached the counter to her left. She noticed him peripherally, tall, perhaps in his early 40s, wearing a dark jacket that looked both casual and expensive in that effortless way. Some people managed. His hair was dark, swept back, and his posture suggested someone accustomed to navigating the world with confidence. He completed his transaction quickly, tucking his ticket into his jacket pocket. As he turned to leave, his eyes met Margaret's for just a moment. She looked away immediately, not wanting her desperation to show, not wanting to be seen as someone in need. But he had paused. Margaret could feel him still standing there, though she kept her gaze fixed on Tommy's jacket, adjusting it unnecessarily, smoothing down his collar, buying time in a moment that stretched uncomfortably. "Excuse me," the man said, his voice gentle, careful. "I don't mean to intrude, but is everything all right?" The kindness in his tone nearly undid her. Margaret blinked rapidly, fighting back the tears that had been threatening all day. She managed a small, unconvincing smile. "We're fine, thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just figuring things out." The man nodded slowly, but he didn't move away. There was something in his expression, not pity, but recognition, as if he understood that sometimes figuring things out was code for drowning slowly. "I couldn't help but notice," he said carefully, "that you've been standing here for a while, and I don't want to overstep, but if you need help with a ticket or anything really, I'd be glad to assist." The offer hung in the air between them. Margaret felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment and something else, a crushing gratitude she wasn't ready to accept. "That's very kind," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "But we couldn't possibly—" "Mama's taking me to Grandma's house," Tommy suddenly announced, lifting his head from Margaret's shoulder to look at the stranger with the frank curiosity of a child. "But we have to wait." The man's expression softened as he looked at Tommy. "That sounds like a wonderful trip," he said warmly. "Your grandma must be very excited to see you." "She makes cookies," Tommy said seriously, as if this was the most important information he could share. The man smiled. "The best grandmas always do." Margaret felt something shift inside her, a small crack in the wall she'd built around her circumstances. This stranger's gentle manner, his lack of judgment, made the impossible feel slightly less so. "I'm sorry," she whispered, looking down at her worn sneakers. "I'm sorry I can't pay. We need to get to Philadelphia, but I don't have enough. And I've already asked at the counter, and I don't know what else to do." The words tumbled out in a rush, each one harder than the last. Admitting defeat, admitting need, Admitting that she had failed to protect her son from this moment of uncertainty, the man was quiet for a moment. When she finally found the courage to look up at him, his expression held no judgment, no superiority, just a quiet understanding. "How much do you need?" he asked simply. $63 for 2 tickets, Margaret said, then added quickly. "But I'll pay you back. If you give me your address, I'll mail it to you as soon as I can. I have a job interview next week in Philadelphia, and my mother is helping with childcare, and I promise I'm good for it." He held up a gentle hand, stopping her spiral. "Let's just get you home first," he said. "Worry about the rest later." Before Margaret could protest further, he had walked to the counter and was speaking quietly with the ticket agent. She watched through tear-blurred vision as he pulled out his credit card. As the agent printed tickets, as this stranger did something impossibly kind for people he had never met and would likely never see again. When he returned, he held out the tickets to her. His eyes were kind, creased at the corners in a way that suggested he smiled often. "Track 7, he said. "Leaves in 20 minutes. That should get you to Philadelphia by dinner time." Margaret took the tickets with shaking hands. I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "We all need help sometimes. There's no shame in it." Tommy had been watching this exchange with wide eyes. Now he reached out a small hand toward the man. "Thank you for helping my mama," he said with the solemn sincerity only a child can manage. The man gently shook Tommy's hand, his large one engulfing the small one. "You're very welcome, young man. You take good care of your mama, okay?" "I will," Tommy promised earnestly. Margaret felt tears spilling down her cheeks now, no longer trying to hold them back. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you do this for us?" The man was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant, as if remembering something from long ago. "When I was younger," he said slowly, "someone helped my family when we needed it most. I never got the chance to pay that person back, so I try to pay it forward when I can." He reached into his wallet and pulled out a business card, handing it to Margaret. "My name is David Mitchell. I'm an attorney here in the city. If you ever need legal help, or if that job interview leads somewhere and you want to pay it forward someday yourself, you can reach me at this number, but there's no obligation. Consider the tickets a gift." Margaret looked down at the card, then back up at him. "David," she repeated softly. "I'm Margaret, and this is Tommy." "It's nice to meet you both," David said warmly. "Now you should probably head to your platform. Philadelphia's waiting." Margaret wanted to say more, to express the depth of what this meant, to somehow convey that he had done more than buy tickets. He had restored something she thought she'd lost. Faith, maybe, or hope, or simply the belief that goodness still existed in the world. But all she could manage was a whispered "thank you" that carried the weight of everything unsaid. David nodded, gave Tommy a small wave, and turned to leave. Margaret watched him walk away. This stranger who had changed her day, who had seen her in her lowest moment and responded with grace instead of judgment. "Come on, sweetheart," she said to Tommy, shifting him in her arms. "Let's go see Grandma." As they made their way to track 7, Margaret clutched the tickets like precious documents. Around them, the station continued its perpetual motion, people arriving, departing, rushing, waiting. But for Margaret, time had slowed. Each step toward the train felt significant, as if she was walking not just toward Philadelphia, but toward something new. On the train, she settled Tommy into the window seat. He pressed his face against the glass, watching the platform with the endless fascination of a young child. Margaret sat beside him, David's business card still in her hand. She thought about kindness, how it could come from unexpected places, how it could arrive precisely when you'd stopped looking for it. She thought about how close she'd come to giving up today, to sitting down in that station and simply not knowing what to do next. And she thought about paying it forward, about a future day when she might be the one with enough, when she might see someone standing lost and afraid, when she might have the chance to offer the same grace she'd received. The train began to move, carrying them away from New York and toward home. Tommy leaned against her, his small, warm body, a reminder of why she kept going even when everything felt impossible. She wrapped her arm around him and looked out at the passing landscape, watching the city give way to suburbs, darkness to light. "Mama," Tommy said sleepily, "that man was nice." "Yes, baby," Margaret replied, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "He was very nice."
Will we see him again?
Margaret considered the question. "Maybe someday," she said. "But even if we don't, we'll remember his kindness. And when we can, we'll be kind to someone else who needs help. That's how kindness works. It keeps moving forward." Tommy nodded, satisfied with this answer, and closed his eyes. Within minutes, he was asleep, his breathing deep and even. Margaret sat in the gentle rocking of the train, holding her sleeping son, feeling something settle in her chest. Tomorrow would still bring its challenges. The job interview might not pan out. Money would still be tight. Life would still be hard. But today, a stranger had reminded her that she wasn't alone, that asking for help wasn't failure, that grace existed in the world, offered freely by people who understood that we're all just trying to make it through. She tucked David's business card carefully into her wallet, next to the $17 that suddenly felt like more than it had that morning. Not because its value had changed, but because she had been reminded that worth isn't measured only in dollars. It's measured in moments like these, in the kindness of strangers, in the safety of a child sleeping peacefully, in the knowledge that somewhere ahead, her mother was waiting with open arms and cookies fresh from the oven. The train carried them home through the fading afternoon light, and Margaret let herself believe that everything somehow would be all right.